Shoot the breeze topic number one tonight. Hold on. Shoot the breeze topic number one tonight is why are Africans so hard on other Africans and so welcoming to foreigners? Why are Africans so hard on other Africans and so welcoming of foreigners? This came with a link. Before we go to it, though, let me just shout out to the matron who joined as well, and also let me shout out brother Buana Hagoziki. How are you this week?
Hey, Cool, I'm good, man. I'm good. Listen, the ladies only beat us by 30 views, man. They only got us by 30 views. Come on, man.
Well, when I put up a post on the community tab,
Yeah, I see that. I see. Hey, that's Tanzan voting more than once.
it was like 90 to 10. Um, so yeah, but again, you guys who are listening, we can do that again. Lero says we take the W. She puts up a fire emoji. We can do that again. Join the Discord, DM me, and say, hey, I'd like to see a discussion on this particular video, and I'll set that up. All right. So should it be topic number one is why are Africans so hard on other Africans and so welcoming of foreigners? Let's check out the link, and then we'll discuss it.
Yes, everybody, thank you very much for being here again today. I really appreciate you. We have a few questions we need to talk about. Okay. The first one is I hope I'm going to get answers from you guys. We need your implications so we can maybe move forward with our lives. My first question to you is why do Africans get different treatment when they go to a foreign African country as compared to Caucasians? Let me put it this way, to white people who come to Africa. In a very simple term, I'll say, why would a Ugandan get a different treatment going to a foreign country in Africa compared to a white person going to the same country? Vice versa. I don't understand that. Starting for immigration, you get to immigration, they look at you in a very condescending way, asking you, when are you leaving our beautiful country? This is something I personally experienced in South Africa. It hurts my feelings. And I'm not saying this to throw anybody under the bus. I'm just being honest. This is not a South African thing. This is a general, almost general thing, at least. When are you leaving our beautiful country? Dude, I just arrived. Take a break. When are you leaving our beautiful country? What do you mean? Do you think they would ask the same question to a white person that are arriving in African country? I don't think so. Why are we subjected to pressure when we go through immigration in African countries? Even if they don't say it openly, but you can feel the pressure. You can feel them looking at you in a very funny way, pulling you aside, making you feel like you don't belong, making you sometimes feel like you've done something really wrong, even if you know you have not done nothing wrong. Pushing you in a corner in a way that you feel complied to pay something, to bribe, so you can leave or move on with your life or go at least to the country or enter the country or be granted a visa. Why things that are written on immigration websites are never a reflection of things that you see on the ground in most African countries, at least? Then we pretend to love each other, to be a support for one another, and we call each other brothers in Africa. I think it's very hypocritical. And I think these are questions we need to ask one another in a very pure way, in a very honest way. How can Africa move forward? How can Africa be a strong figure in the world, a strong continent, if the most oppressive people toward Africans are in fact Africans, as opposed to the lectures that we get about colonialism? The crux of the matter is when Europeans come to African countries, they are treated differently than the way African nationals are treated, often called aliens. Why do we sometimes feel like our rights are not the same as those of the locals, at least as those of the white foreigners in a foreign country in Africa? I don't understand that. I don't get it. Europeans are Europeans whether they are in France, in Belgium, in Italy, or Portugal. They feel the same feeling. We don't, because we feel like we're oppressed by our own brothers or supposedly brothers. How do you explain that? Number two, why is it difficult for Africans to accept their daughter to get married to an African national from a foreign African country or different African country? Why is it difficult? Why do they make it feel like a pain in the butt? And in most cases, you hear people say things like, is that your new man? Why? Why? Like, the girl goes to her parents and says, I want to marry this guy. I want to marry this guy named Adrian from Kenya. And I'm a girl from Uganda. Or let's say I want to marry this guy named Abdul from Senegal. And I'm a woman from Uganda. What does the family say? In all of Uganda, you have not found a decent man? Have you looked through all of the country? You have not found one man that's good enough for you? You just have to go find somebody from Senegal or Nigeria or Ghana? Okay, maybe there's an issue with that. But why don't they apply the same rules when it comes to white people? When a white person wants to marry a Ugandan girl or a Kenyan girl for that matter, or a Nigerian girl, then that's not a problem. It does not pose a problem. When it's a white guy, it poses no problem. But when it's an African person from a foreign or a different African country, then you come up with rules and stories and historical facts and all that crap. I don't understand that. How hypocritical is that? Just like some girl told me a while back, a woman from Eritrea, she explained to me how her country usually do not encourage people to marry people from different countries, okay, because of the things that has happened to the country. As according to her, they lost many men and stuff like that. Therefore, they needed to urgently find a way to bring people together, to have more Eritreans, pure-blooded, under bracket. But then she told me a story about a friend marrying a white guy and how they live in America. And I'm like, okay, this is controversial. Like, this is, I mean, aren't you the same person that just said earlier that you do not marry people from different countries because of cultural reasons or war reasons? Okay, so that only applies to African nationals, not with white people. How can we be the same people with that type of mentality? I don't understand that. Why is the credibility of an African person is always doubted when he goes somewhere else compared to white people? Let me give you an example. A man comes with a project that's decent enough, and he's a good man. He's got everything that's needed, everything that's required. He wants to bring in a project. Why do you ask all these questions? What degree does he have? Where did he study? What gives him the authority to do that? But you don't ask the same question when it's an Italian that comes with the same project. He doesn't go through the same scrutiny, at least, as a black person would in Africa. When a black person goes to an African country, they want to control and find out everything down to the suitcase. Why is he here? Why are you here now? Who do you know here? How long are you staying? Where are you staying? Do you have a number? When it's a white person, they don't ask that. They assume he's here to do good. And this has nothing to do with me being against white people. I love them very much. This has everything to do with African mentality of being subordinate, of feeling lesser men and treating other African people in a very condescending way. Unacceptable. Have you noticed that some of us complain about our government, saying that government is not running things correctly, government is corrupt, government is this, government is that, service delivery is not good? As long as we're not profiting from government, if a member of a government is part of your family, then you don't complain anymore. You can complain when you have nobody in government, but as soon as one of your family members is elected in government, then you don't complain anymore. Then the pain of everybody is not your pain anymore. Then you're not an activist anymore. So most of us are activists when we do not benefit directly from the system. So it has nothing to do with integrity. It has everything to do with profit. Why are we like that? Why are we easily corruptible? They can kill people as long as you get paid. You don't see any problem. If you don't get paid, then oh, you pull all the alarms and everybody has to know that something's wrong. I think we need to change our mentality. And beyond that, I need you to come forward with ideas. Let's talk, brothers. Okay? This is how we call each other in Africa, even if we don't really mean it sometimes, most of the time at least. Let's talk. Things are happening in the world. Russia is at war with Ukraine. We're going to be impacted whether we like it or not. I'm going to make another video about that later. But for now on, let's discuss. Why are the prices different from foreign African nationals? Why are the services different? Why is the treatment different? Why can't we treat each other like real brothers, like we pretend to be? Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate you.
Well, you're muted if you're speaking.
Can you guys hear me now?
Now we can.
This mic is just whatever. Yeah, so thanks for joining me. I like how this guy professed his love for white folks. Very interesting. Let me mute that mic. Yeah, so I wanna thank everyone who joined the chat. I see Trigger Happy 262 is out there, Bobby Wright. The forecast is out there. And we have Danger Daring has joined us on the panel. Danger Daring, how are you this week? I think it's your first time here, right? Unmute your mic if you're there. Okay, I guess. You guys can hear me, right? Only, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, you golden. You golden.
Okay, maybe y'all can't hear me.
No, we can hear you. I guess bro can't hear us.
Yeah, he can.
No, you guys should be able to hear me. How come
he can.
How come this is acting up? Mr. Untouchable, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Huh.
Those bro can't hear us.
Okay.
Oh goodness.
All right. Seems like you guys cannot hear me. I don't know why that is. If you're in the chat, type of one.
Oh goodness.
They can't hear. Oh, I can't hear them. Okay, let me see if I could fix that. All right. Thanks for that forecast. I don't know why I can't hear you guys.
Can you hear me now? 1, 2.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Good. Okay.
I can hear you now. Okay, thanks. Yeah. Sorry about that. It's this mic is a piece of shit. Anyway, with that said, Danger Daring, you're new here, I think. How are you this week? Okay, maybe Danger Daring, mic is muted and can't hear me. Let's go to Buana Agaziki. Buana, what say you? Why are Africans so hard on other Africans and so welcoming of foreigners?
I wouldn't paint us with a broad brush like that. I wouldn't do that. But what I would say to a lot of his why questions, there's historically many things and reasons why he is mistreated or perceived in a particular way, as opposed to when Europeans come to the continent and engage in business or even engage in any kind of social practice, marriages, etc., etc., etc. And I think that we go over this millions of times. You know, the system, not only in the Americas, but in the Caribbean and in Africa as well, is a model that is European based. Okay? That system conditions the minds of people to perceive the world in a particular way. So the outcomes is when we see each other, we are conditioned to look to each other with fear, with suspicion, with contempt. But when they see European people, the the um the the result is, well, we should embrace these people. We should love these people. These people are great. This is the narrative that is not necessarily created by us, but it was created by external people. These external people all over the world. And for the longest period of time, we talk about things like decolonization. I think Kwame Nkrumah talked about it, and many other African leaders going through the process of decolonizing people after you gain what you perceive to be an independence. Africa or the Caribbean or any so-called colored country hasn't went through the process of decolonizing the minds of people to change the perspective. Why? Because even though the colonizers left, the system still remained instead, still remained in place. So the outcomes is as if the colonizers never left. So until we deal with the decolonization process, not only in the schools, but in the education and every aspect of human activity, then you will continuously see the results of these things. And there are many African thinkers who've explained these things over the years. And he as an African person, he has a smartphone in his hand. He can research his stuff. He can answer all of the why questions. But I feel like he wants to ask the questions to point out to the fact that we have some inherent failing in us that keeps us treating each other in the same way and manner. And I think that that's a disingenuous, dishonest conversation. Another thing I would like to add as well is when he says that if you are African, you are perceived in a particular way. It depends on the passport you have. Because if I go to Africa with an American passport, maybe I may be treated different. If I go to Africa with an English passport, maybe I might be treated different as an African person, as opposed to having a Nigerian passport and trying to traverse through the continent. So I say, and the reason for that is the perceived reason for that is, well, these people have money. These people may improve my state, or these people may give me access to Candyland, to Disneyland. So let me treat these people differently. So there are many things going on. I think that if this brother was to just do a little bit more research with the same smartphone he has in his hand, he would be able to find all the internal answers to his questions. Lastly, I would just say a lot of the things he's saying is based off his personal experience. And one's personal experience, you can't generalize because it happened. It would happen to everyone. Some people's personal experience may not be, they are looked at with suspicion and contempt and fear. Maybe if you go to a particular African society or Caribbean society, you are embraced. So I think it just depends on a person's perspective and situation as well. So there are several things that you could run through, but I think that you have to be honest with the discussion. And if you are honest about finding answers to your discussion, I would use that same tool you have in your hand to go through the questions that you posing to the general public, to do some research in yourself to answer these why questions, because it's not that hard. I'll stop there.
I want to say peace to Yana B, um, who's out there. Yana B in the chat said, let's stop making excuses. We lost the battle, the war, to people who were in caves for 2,000 years. Until we wake up from that, we won't go forward to rebuild. Bobby Wright here, he says, Dr. Asa Hilliard termed it conceptual incarceration. We as Africans are conceptually incarcerated. Sister Raw's here. She said, same way all over this planet, my brother Bobby, you're right. Most love their enemies. They can't wait. Them what look like them, do like them, and be like them over stuff. Yeah, so she's basically saying black folks love their enemies and want to be like them as well. She also says, yes, chains around their brains. Danger Daring. I believe this might be the first time you've been here. How are you this week?
Actually, I'm very good. How about yourself? I'm sorry about that because I didn't know how to use the mic at first, so my apologies for that. Well, hello
Uh, it's,
everyone.
it's all right. Hello to you. I had some technical difficulties as well.
Yeah,
Danger, you saw the prompt and the video. Uh,
yes.
is it the case? The prompt says that we treat each other one way and treat white folks a different way. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think that's very true because at first I think it all starts like well, for me, I believe that it starts from like childhood all the way to like teenage years because they said that's the most pivotal points where the brain start developing how we see the world. So what I first want to say is like when we first was in elementary school, the first thing if you live in America or and you know in Africa wherever in the Caribbean, anywho, when you live in these areas, the first thing they teach us is that um, Africans were slaves and white people, you know, build this. So as a child, we are in our subconscious already placed in white people or non-black people in a way that they're the ones that we look at in like a child-parent relationship. So we look at these non-black people or white people as a parent and we're the child. So in that way we do aspire to be like them. And another thing too is entertainment, as far as like movies, televisions, magazines, pornographic images, all these things, you know, the subconscious is stronger than the almost active mind. So the subconscious reacts to things in subtle ways. So in subtle ways, like you see a movie and you see a white couple and you see them very wealthy and things like that and being so nice, these things are really getting placed in the subconscious in a like subtle way. So, you know, for me, I think it's more psychologically more than colonization and you know as far as well too we are our environment as well. So you come in a household where your parents or family constantly put in your head as a child, oh, they do good for us, you should respect, yo, they do this, they do that, you already building an image of how you view them. And so it's going to be natural for a person just take likeness to people that are foreign rather than themselves. Well, I don't want to say a long answer for that. It's a lot of main factors, so I'm trying to like summarize it in a short way as possible.
Now go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
And so as far as me, I remember like like excuse me, and being in school, the first foremost thing, and reading books, and I already see me like being this inferior for some reason, and I did at first. I did feel like that before I educated myself. Once I went to college, and that thing of being a slave and already out for myself, I'm speaking in my personal sense that I would start seeing non-black people as a parent and like, oh, okay, they can do this, they can do that. And I didn't feel like I could accomplish anything. Just like you see many people, no disrespect to people who work in retail or fast food, but that's the first thing we just aspire to be is working in those type of areas. We don't aspire to be anything else but a servant. We like black people always be a servant to everything from fast food to healthcare to retail to any other service. We always play a servitude role because it's already instilling us as a child to be a servant to people that are not like us. And I think that's why also too we are so welcoming to foreigners. And that's why too I don't watch any non-black movies at all. Because even for myself too, even though I'm older now, like 29, I don't want to program that in my head. So what I do, I watch positive images of black people in movies and television. And I start seeing myself differently too after I watch these. And even my subconscious, I think of myself more highly after watching more focused, African based, healthy, positive images of ourselves. So that's what I have to say regarding that.
I appreciate that, Danger.
You're very
Danger, how
welcome.
did you come to How'd you come to find us?
Actually, Oni.
Oh, Oni. Okay. All right. So
Yes.
thanks, Oni, for that. Speaking of Oni, let's go to Oni now. Oni, what are your thoughts?
All right, peace. All right. Yeah, so what I would say, yeah, I liked what Danger was saying about the psychology. And thanks, Danger, for coming through. But what I would say is the other part of it is, well, another part of it is the reality of class, right? Uh, and I also want to just point out this too, that when this guy says, "Hey, white people aren't asked these questions," like I don't know how he knows what white people are asked. I don't think that just because you're asked this question, that means that white people aren't asked that question, because the question is on the form, on the visa form. And I don't think that white people, just don't fill out the visa form. Uh, because they ask you, how long are you going to be in the country? And then also, like, what do you do? What's your profession? All that kind of stuff. And if you're filling out a visa form, like, and you're white, chances are you're also filling out those details. But then it's also a matter of class. Sorry. It's also a matter of class in the sense of, you know, when I go to Africa, I already know, or like for instance, when I was in Ghana, I was treated a lot better than other African people, because I also had a lot more disposable income. You know what I mean? Like I could walk into any restaurant and like the locals couldn't afford the food, right? But I could, because for me it was cheap. And it's kind of the same as, when I go to when I'm in New York City, if I go up to like Manhattan, like if you go around Times Square, you can look at the menu on the outside of a restaurant. It'll tell you it's $100 for the steak plate, and you're just not gonna walk in. And if you walk in, people are gonna look at you funny because they know you don't have that kind of money, right? And the reason why they know you don't have that kind of money is because, well, you're one of the locals, and you're not one of the upper class. If you were the upper class, they'd probably have known you from a mile away. And it's the same with, in Africa when I was there, walking like a forest, walking like a tourist. I'm sorry, what did I say? Forest? All right, foreigner, walking like a foreigner, walking like a tourist. Right? They knew I had money. Because the thing is this: if you are on vacation, right, or if you take a $2,000 trip with your kid, right, so it's like a $4,000 trip. Who knows? But the point is that if you have $4,000 to just walk around another person's country, right, you have a disposable income that other people don't have. In the sense that, I was actually asking one of my friends, like some of my friends would be like, oh, like they might pull in, like a professor might be like, oh, I pull in like, let's say $20 a day or something, or $100 a day. I don't know what they pull in, but they pulled in like the kind of money that you wouldn't pull in America, right? And I'm just getting a random number. I totally forgot it was like 2 years ago or whatever, right? But the point is that, if you're pulling in that kind of money and then somebody else walks in and he's like, hey, I'm going to buy whatever the freak I want, whenever, they're going to treat me like, hey, you're a big customer. Whereas if I walk in, if I'm a local and I clearly am not making the kind of disposable money that the foreigner has, then no, they're not going to treat you the same. So, the guy complaining, one, like, it doesn't make sense that I mean, the thing is that realistically, if you are running a business or if you are trying to get money from other people, then the people with money you treat different from the people who don't. Like, you treat the haves different from the have-nots. And it's not to say that white people are always haves or that black people are always have-nots. Because like when I was in Africa, I was one of the haves, right? And not like a super have. I couldn't just walk into a bank and be like, oh, I want this factory, right? But at the same time, it's like, yeah, you treat the haves different from the have-nots. And that's just a general principle. And I think, maybe you might follow stereotypes and it might like offend somebody who's a have-not. But I would say that what we as African people should do is we should strive to be haves, strive to have. And then if we're mistreated, okay, that happens. Like even Oprah was told, hey, you can't afford something. And she's like, the fuck, But, it is what it is. But the reality is that on a global scale, if we're being honest, notwithstanding the fact that, colonialism and blah, 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 if we're being honest, whites are haves, or whites generally have, not generally have, but like, particularly if you're a white person traveling to Africa, you obviously have a disposable income. But like typically, it wouldn't be surprising if somebody in the field of watching people, applying their own personal experience to different people, if they couldn't say to themselves, oh, you know what? Like, just off of my own experience, I could see how white people are haves and black people are have-nots. Now it might not be a universal, right? And obviously you can't apply it, in a certain way, um, but it comes off as, this guy sounds like he's like, I would think he is a have. I think he would have something, but if he isn't a have, and if he's a have-not, because he presents himself as a have, if you will, right? But if he is in fact not a have and he's a have not, whatever, and I hate to say it this way, but the reality is that, yeah, you're going to be treated differently, and it sucks, but it just kind of tells you, as a people group, we should start developing and building our wealth so that the statement changes, and the expectation changes, and when it changes, then you won't necessarily be treated like that from your own people, because they will say, hey, you are a have, and therefore, and you're one of us.
I hear you guys' points, but isn't that problematic too? Isn't that problematic that for your people to treat you like for your people to treat you good, you have to be a have? You know what I mean? Like and also, there is some difference in treatment. I could speak, being from the Caribbean and stuff. There is a difference, generally speaking, in some treatment for white folks in black areas. I can't think of the solid example right now, but there is some difference to, which is why I think the prompt was created. But just to go back to what Oni was saying, like the haves and the have-not, isn't that kind of a, how do I put it? It's kind of I get the advice to make yourself a have, but what if you what if you weren't able to? Are you now less of a person because you don't have the same as this other person? So is that how we gonna kind of make our people, view each other? I'll start with Danger on that question. Are we gonna hold our people to these statuses basically, and treat them based on status? Danger, unmute your mic if you're talking.
Oh yeah, but yeah, really, I really, like I told, like I had like said before, like to everyone, I really think it's deeper than just like on the surface level. And I think I think a lot of times when these topics come about, people taking them in like in a literal sense, when it's more complex than just that. Like I said too, with this type of matter, and this is in the psyche and in the mind, what makes a person do these reasons, and why we're influenced to do this. And as I say, like why Africans are so hard on other Africans and so welcoming of foreigners, that I also too have seen like movies and stuff. And I know I keep referencing entertainment because that's a huge portion. Like us Black people, we look at entertainment more than reading. We do. So we watch entertainment in all forms, like from music, film, television. But when you see non-Black people in a more positive imagery and like in a more positive light, you automatically thinking this, watching this over and over and over and over. What is it called? It's this thing in psychology called object relations theory. When you watch something or see something multiple times, it gets stuck in your subconscious, and it gets stuck there, like from watching so many times of an image of a certain action or a thing. But nonetheless, that's why I think it started from elementary too. I think all of us, we have read books in school when we had history classes. The first thing is that we were slaves, so automatically we already thinking of ourselves as children as like, oh, we came here to serve others, and we just automatically think that. But our minds are so innocent; it's easy to influence it because the brain still hasn't fully developed. But I think it has a lot to do with the psychology. Then the second thing, the biggest thing, is the family, because I see a lot of family like, oh, love is love, and don't say this. A family has a lot of influence, like your environment is a major influence. And I'm reading this book actually. It's by Nathaniel Brad. Nathaniel. I'm sorry, Nathaniel Braden. It's called Honoring Thyself or honoring the self. I'm sorry, honoring the self. And in the psychology, he was talking about like what I just said about how much the environment influenced the self-esteem and how much it influenced your self-concept of how you view yourself. And he actually said the ego is very important. And the ego is like the well, let me not get too deep into that. But nonetheless, he said the self-concept is a factor of environment, our personal ego, and all these things that plays a factor. And he said that actually like the self-concept gets the ideas from things around it to make it create the imagery of what they are and how they how they perceive others. And I feel like that's very important for people to know that, especially Black people. I think Black people should study psychology and self-esteem because if they study psychology, they will understand why these things happen. And I'm trying to think of something like what is something related to this? Uh, oh yes, okay. So for me, I'm Cape Verdean, but I had dated a Nigerian man. So the thing with him is they love watching a lot of American movies. Okay, and when they watch Black American movies, they more watch the movies that usually a gangster movie, shooting up somebody. But then they watch white people movies and they're like, oh, these people are so friendly and nice. And this is how they perceive them because he told me like they don't get the chance to see them as often. So how they really get base of their information is from movies or television shows or being on Twitter or Instagram or something like that. So they don't get to experience that. The only type of experience they get to view anybody that's not them is entertainment. And even for us as Black people too, we only experience others in the form of entertainment when we don't have the proximity like to them. So with that being said, I think that's the first foremost important thing is to stop the entertainment because entertainment is the biggest one. And people don't even pay attention to that. They're like, oh, what entertainment has to do with it? That's the biggest one. The music and the music videos, especially like if you see like a lot of music videos now, it's very popular not to have white people dance to the dance hall music because I know you said from Caribbean dance hall music or white people dancing to like certain Black styles and Black people like, oh my God, like you see it's these type of things we doing to ourselves and we're not even knowing. So yes, that's what my comment I have to say. And I'm sorry if it's not like a cohesive comment, but this is my first time on here and first time doing this. So
It's fine. It's
I
fine.
do apologize.
It's fine. You'll get the hang of it just now. Tanzan in the chat said, "Good to hear another sister on the panel. Karibu or welcome, Dada sister." So yeah, welcome, Danger Daring
Oh, thank you so much too.
Forecast Radio in the chat says a lot more people are cooned out globally than we realize. You guys were wondering about the chat. I simulcast here and on KWAZ Radio. So some folks was over there, like Sister Raw. I think Bobby Wright was on KWAZ Radio. So that's why if you're on the bitter medicine side, you won't see their comments. But also make sure you click, instead of top chat, at the top of the chat, click on live chat. This way you see everything that's on the bitter medicine side, if that's where you are. I want to catch this this one comment that I saw. Tanzan said, but only everyone, even the have-not, should be treated with some dignity. Do you have to have in order to be treated well? So I think Tanzan put the follow-up question for me in a good way. So, Bwana Hagaziki, do you have to have in order to be treated well?
No, I think that for me, first let me piggyback off of what the sister was initially saying about entertainment, especially TV. Cress Wilson she used to say when she was alive that reading is more important than watching TV, and I think that a lot of us we play into the conditioning, and what the television does by watching more than 8 hours of television. We are the largest consumers of the so-called idiot box, more so than any other group of people. So it would be easier for us to
Very
be,
true.
yeah, it would be easier for us to be more indoctrinated than any other group of people. And these people, these outside groups are waging a campaign against, really against us in creating the idea or the narrative that we are the worst whenever we engage in any activity that has nothing to do with their benefit. It's always in, going down to degradation, violence, some kind of degenerate behavior. This is a campaign that other groups that remain nameless well, let me say it. Let me say it out loud. Who the Jews create, the Jewish control media create, with the complicity of our own people, because we act in these movies. We sign the contracts to deliver messages that is self-destructive to our communities. So we are complicit in creating a narrative of when people look at us, in different situations with a kind of jaundiced eye. We help to create these conditions. So I see it. I see that's one of the reasons why we are looked at in a particular way. But I would also say it's not I would say money, but I would also say in making yourself useful. I think that relationships to be reciprocal, and what I mean by that is that when you see me, I may not be able to possibly make you $1 million, but I could fix your car. When I could do your lawn. I could fix your plumbing in your house. I have a particular skill, or I am masterful at a particular thing that makes me useful to you, and so do you with the same to me. So when we see each other in this kind of reciprocal arrangement, then I don't think that there'll be an issue where you look at me as a nothing, a waste man. I can't really do nothing for you, because life, I feel like human relationships are based on reciprocity, give and take and give. And I would say that that's not necessarily based on just an economic standard. I think it goes beyond that in how people gauge you and view you or value or not necessarily value you. And if people see you as useless, you really can't do nothing for that. And this is a tragedy of the human condition, because we should look at each other as human beings on the basis of being human beings and seeing the God in me, you see the God in you. That's not reality. We gauge each other differently. So we gauge each other based on economics or our usefulness. What can this person do for me, or what can I do for that person? And based off of that, that's how we measure. And that doesn't necessarily have to do with money. I don't know what your brothers and sisters have to say about that, but I'll stop there.
I just want to point out something. Bobby Wright says entertainment is used to send subliminal messaging. Yana B said media is definitely a major demon in the world. But I like what Trigger Happy brings up here. He says, I don't want to be that guy. But what particular measurement do we have that we are the larger consumer of TV? Because that also presupposes that others watch it less, which I'm not sure if that's the case. Where do we get that from? Is that them telling us? Or is that just anecdotal? Like, where, Mr. Untouchable, I'm asking you, Buana, where do we get that?
Well, I have gotten this from a social psychology. A particular person. There's a particular person, a social psychologist. Where I've gotten that from is a particular gentleman named. His name is Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy, and he wasn't really specifically talking to black people. He was talking on a level of broke people and wealthy people, and whether who consume who consume the most consume the most television and media. They usually on a bottom end of the economic scale, and people who usually focuses on things like reading, improving the things they're doing as far as their work is concerned, who pay more attention. They'll pay more than attention to focusing on career, business, money, reading, listening to lectures and things like that. More of the time is focused towards that end. And the people who watch TV, they're usually the workers. They're usually people who have jobs just before broke or over broke, and they're usually people who are at bottom end at the economic scale. Now, when you tie that to where we are globally, we are usually at the bottom end of the economic scale. So when I talk about these things, I'm just looking at the actions of what we do on a daily basis, in and out. you know, and it is really filtered through social media, television. This is our discussion: social media, television, and entertainment. We pay most of our time to these distracting things, and it takes us away, I feel, from being productive people. So this is where I would have gotten that from.
Thank you for that, Buana. You see, Trigger Happy has more comments, and he said, well, if it's broke people, that's probably multiracial. Though we are the poorest demographic in a lot of countries, but I wouldn't say that's just a black thing. He says, remember, we just went through questioning how this guy knows how white people are treated. I don't know if we should do the same in other analyses, but I want to go back because this is the follow-up question. And I think Sister Tanzan touched on it nicely. She said, even well-off Africans are treated shabbily by some other Africans if they are from a different country. But the question that she asked earlier was, do you have to have in order to be treated well? So I'm bringing it back to Oni, who brought up this concept earlier. Oni, what say you? Do you have to have for black folks to treat you like something?
Well, all right. Well, first I'll start off with I guess my one of my favorite jokes is this Indian guy. He said it, and it was just the funniest. And he was like, "Look, I want to make enough money so that women will like me for my personality." You know what I mean? As to say that we do this already. You present yourself to a woman, run down, unironed shirt, unkempt hair, whatever. Say it's same. Say don't say it's me without saying it's me. But anyway, but like you pretty much present yourself in a certain way, like you're not put together or what have you. And she's not going to give you the same time of day as when you present yourself like you are put together. That's just something on an interpersonal level, everywhere, like almost everywhere on this planet. But I want people to notice two things. Like when we listen to Buana was like, "Hey, look, it's really about how useful you are and not how much money you have." And he was like, "It's not." He was like, "It's really how useful you are, not the economics." The reality is this: economics is how useful you are.
I didn't say
So
that.
it's
Didn't say that.
no. When you contrasted, when you said it
I
wasn't economics, but
I said not only.
yeah, no, okay, yeah. The point being that that's an economic part, and the other part is like even on the subconscious level when we listen to the description of, hey, look, we watch more television because we are more poor than we're poor than other people, and therefore because we're poor, it is a reflection that we probably also have the negative habit. But then it's like on a subconscious level, why are we saying that we're poor if not for the reality that maybe we are, and even when we say, hey, look, like even when Trigger Happy says, hey, but look, it's a multiracial thing, it's not just a black thing, it also includes, hey, you know what, we do recognize that black people are generally, or not generally, but that black people are occupying a lower economic position even in Africa. So I mean, obviously, I think when we look at Tanzan's question of should the have-nots be treated with some dignity, of course, you should treat people with dignity. That's an important thing to do. But if you have a certain responsibility of let's say facilitating an economy, right? If your responsibility is in the protection of the economy or what have you, whatever, if you have some sort of goal towards something like towards essentially expanding the economy, the question becomes, who do you treat better and who do you treat worse? And that's really the unfortunate thing, is that we even in the dispute between, hey, well, who are the poor people and who are, it's a multiracial thing, blah, blah, blah. We kind of subconsciously concede that actually, yes, our people may not be the wealthiest people on the planet, whereas, again, if you're talking about people who travel, like people like foreigners, when they travel, particularly if they're traveling by airplane from the Western world, right? The odds of them being broke are very unlikely, like, because first off, you're flying to another country, right? Second of all, you can't stay. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Now, if you're coming in as a refugee, chances of you being broke are pretty likely, right? So are they going to? So the question becomes, hey, should you treat the person who's like, let's say, like, use me as an example. Like, all right, I'm an African. I fly in from America, right? To go spend money in whatever, like in Ghana, let's say, right? And then you're saying the treatment of me should be equal to the treatment of, let's say, there's a shootout in Nigeria and people are running for whatever reason, because they're running, and then they go into a refugee camp, and there's no economic, opportunity there, but they don't have necessarily the disposable income. They don't necessarily have the resources, the job. And you're saying that when we both go into town, like, everybody should look at us as equal, and that's fine. Like, that's very noble. It sounds good on paper, but the reality is that if I were a business owner, the reality is that if you're a business owner or whatever, if you're trying to protect the economy, you're probably not going to be so suspicious of me, coming from America, as you would the other person coming from a war, right? Now, obviously, that's not like obviously it sounds bad. It sounds bad. Why are we being suspicious of this person? Who's to say that there's anything bad about them? What's to say so on and so forth? That's true. But what if there was crime before? Like, what if there were, refugees who were stealing and so on and so forth? And again, they have every good reason to. But if your interest is in expanding your economy, it might just be that, from your perspective, right, that if you're trying to protect your own business, right, that you're going to look suspiciously on the other people. And I say this because, in fact, I'll say it this way. In fact, so this is an interesting story, but so apparently I have a sister, right? All right, so my sister, I sometimes forget myself too. I shouldn't say that because that'll come back to me, right? But anyway, my sister was like, she wanted to do some writing, and she's like a anime fan or whatever. So she told me to watch an anime that she liked, and I told her to watch some shows that I wanted her to watch, to advise her on her writing. So I decided to watch this show, and it's a Japanese show, obviously, set in Japan, right? And they decided to give a backstory of this Japanese, of this particular bandit, right? And the bandit grows up, from like an assassin family, whatever. The point is that he's harassed by his community based off of how he looks, because his family comes from a particular group of people who were traditionally thieves, among other things, right? And they kind of abuse him, and they kind of whatever. But the thing is that this is just a regular thing. Like the way how they put it in Japan, it's not, oh, well, this is self-hate, we're so on and so forth. It's just, hey, you know what? If somebody was caught stealing, for instance, right? Or if a group of people were caught stealing, that the people in the community would turn against that particular demographic, right? It's not complicated. But when it comes to us, we say, hey, why isn't this why are you treating me with suspicion just because, when we talk about Nigeria and the Yahoo boys, like, just because, we are notorious for stealing, why are you treating us like these? And it's like, well, that's what happens in the real world. That's what happens in the real world. It doesn't seem fair, but it is what people would do in an actual community setting when a group of people come in and they might not have, and you can't detect their economic viability, or you don't necessarily, so on and so forth. Now, as far as when it comes to white people, whereas white people do have this historic relation, and you might think, hey, let's throw them under the bus or whatever, right? The trouble is that, the trouble is that when it comes to white people, they still have more resources a lot of times, particularly the ones that can travel. And that sucks, but that's the weakness of this economic model that extends far back to, other societies and other time zones and other times. But that's just the weakness. And obviously I would think that that's really the problem. of looking at white people without regard to their his intentions. Whereas when it comes to us as a people, I could see that looking at treating somebody who travels differently if they're well to do. I could see that being a realism. Even if it doesn't seem fair, I could just see it as being a realism.
Speaking of realism, I will say this. I will warn that we shouldn't write off people's observations and concerns, because I've traveled to Black countries, and out of respect, I won't mention what the Black nations are. And I've been treated kind of funny style while having to watch white visitors, right, be treated differently. I'll just leave it at that. And I'm talking, yeah, I've been to some Black countries, and that's what I've experienced. I won't doubt this man's, what he's talking about on the continent. And I do believe, generally speaking, and it might have everything to do with what Oni and some of you have been saying on the panel here. It might have everything to do with, the have and the have-nots. But I do believe that we got to be better than that too. We have to be a little bit better than that too. Give the fake smile to the tourists who have some money, but be kind to your own people still, right? Maybe you can give access to the quote unquote have not in areas where they're supposed to be haves. I kind of get that. But we should be nice to our folks too. Like, one of the things I always hated back home, I remember one time being on Paradise Island and being in a casino. Was it Paradise Island or was it Cable Beach? I was in a casino, and they got me up out of there. Bahamians can't even be in the casino at that time. I find that to be nonsense. But
what did they do? What did they do to you?
They hounded me out of there. They hounded me, and I'm from there. They hounded me and told me I can't be in there. And I'm like, what do you mean I can't be in here? And I'm looking around all these white folks inside this place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I know that has something to do with the Christian Council and all that. Why not Hagaziki could probably break that down better than I can. But, complete nonsense. I will say again, we, regardless of have and have not, and I respect that analysis, but regardless of that, I would say that we need to be better at playing the game. You know what I'm saying? Smile with these foreigners with money, but also still treat our people with some dignity and respect. Trigger Happy 262 asks a question: how does the realism get solved, or is it naturalistic? And because of that, we are unable to solve it. How do we change the inequality, and how do we change the psychology? I'll let you guys answer that in the chat.
Let me actually. I wanted to tell this story because it was one of the most hot, like, I want to say one of the worst stories I've heard.
Go ahead.
I was trying to learn a language, right? And so I went to this website where you could learn to, like, you could teach somebody your language, and you can teach somebody English, they'll teach you their language, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm on the site and I connect with this sister, right? And she's like, hey, you should come to my country, right? All that kind of stuff. Because I'm trying to help her learn English, but I'm kind of like, giving her, I guess, some white sources. So she thinks I'm a white man. So she's inviting me to her country. Then she finds out I'm not white, right? And she's just like, like retracted pretty much. Not really retracted, but, like she switches it up. She's like, oh, yeah, by the way, like, I'm married and, blah, 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 right? But the whole thing is that, like, yeah, she was like, because the thing is that, like you said, smile at people, smile at the foreigner or whatever, right? The reality is this, that, I mean, the way I could look at it in two ways. One, I could say, the fuck is wrong with this lady, right? Why is she inviting this? Why is she inviting a white boy? I mean, not me, obviously, but still, why is she inviting a white boy to visit her town? She's like, oh, I could show you around and all that kind of stuff. But like the idea is, hey, if this white guy comes through and he enjoys himself, he will drop a lot of money.
Exactly.
And the people need money, right? So if you're smiling at the guy, he will, like, if you're making him feel comfortable, making him feel nice. Because I think it was, matter of fact, Brother Makari was telling a story. In fact, he was like, why did the Koreans treat the 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 white soldiers, but more than they like treat the black soldiers. And they were like, white people just have a different spending habit than black folk, you know? And in the sense that black folk would go to a store, you know, it's like selling shirts, and they would buy one good shirt. You know what I mean? They'd buy the one, like they got style. So they're like, this shit rocks, this shit flies. I'm gonna get one of these, right? Whereas white folk, when they go to a store, they just buy every fucking thing, right? You know, like they buy anything, don't even gotta look good, you know? And so the Koreans were like, yeah, we treat the white guy better because he's more like he just has a better spending habit in that sense. And it's the same with, and I'm not going to say that that's like a general thing. I don't know if that's really the case or what have you, but I could see like I said, if the sister is inviting the white boy to come through, whatever, like she's not trying to get with him per se, but she understands that when he's there, he's going to be paying for services. He might be overcharged for the services, and he's not going to complain. He's just going to pay for everything. He's not going to look for no deals. He's not going to look for whatever. He's just going to so on and so forth. Whereas, like realistically, like first off, I'm not trying to overpay when I'm there, but not even just that. It's just like I said, like yeah, the white boy is probably like sometimes people are smiling. I think sometimes people are smiling in order to get something from this white boy because, like you said, if you're in the gambling house, this white boy is probably like, let me drop, you know, 20K. Whereas, you know, at the end of the day, you know, some black folk are probably going to be there to like, you know, like maybe ask, and most black folk are probably going to be like, let me spend at least $100, you know, let me spend $100 and get up out of there. And so if you were running the institution, you know, who would you want? The guy who drops $200,000 and just smiles and laughs and drinks all the alcohol he can and says, I had a good time. Or the guy who's like, hey, I'm just want to see if I can win, you know, if I can win, $10,000. Like, no, you know? But anyway, that's all I would say.
I found the opposite to be true. I found that we are the greatest consumers, and we consume to the degree that even it extends beyond even reason. You know, I think that as far as what we spend, I think that the there's a misunderstanding going on because some people believe that white people even are better tippers than black folks. And I found that to be not necessarily true as well. In my personal experience, I work in the tourism industry, you know, but before. But I found that when it comes to black spending, the idea that we are more savvy consumers as opposed to the white consumer, I don't consider that to be true. And even to the point of there are gambling houses around the country that I live in, and these people would spend down to $1 or even 50 cents in trying to get a lottery ticket to get lucky. Now the owner of these establishments have been able to garner hundreds of millions of dollars because of the loyal customers people would spend down to their last dime or even
Percy Stokes.
rent money for the chance of getting lucky or chance of doubling their profit. So I found out the exact opposite to be true. I find that some white folks in different instances they would buy a T-shirt out of the store because they're not gonna buy. Usually they don't buy. They'll go to Walmart. A millionaire will go to Walmart and buy the most bust down T-shirt, where the black consumer will get the same T-shirt from the same probably Chinese factory that made the bust down T-shirt and spend $100 on that shirt.
That's true.
105, especially if they have a name on it. So from my personal experience, I found just the opposite to be true. Just on my personal experience, and every experiences differ. So
I agree with that too.
Yeah, experiences differ. I agree with those. I think we all are making some interesting point. I think we have to be careful though of the idea, and Real Black Gentleman just joined us. Real Black Gentleman, I'll bring you on for Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 in a minute. But I think we have to be careful of this idea of, the white man can run amok almost and be treated wonderfully, but the black person not so much. I think we have to, again, I think that's a part of us getting organized too and strategizing. I think we have to, like I said before, we have to learn smile that man's way to make your coin, but you always remember your black brother and sister's humanity as well. I want to thank you all.
Exactly.
I want to thank y'all for that conversation there. Let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 2. Shoot the breeze topic number 2. And if you guys in the chat have more comments, by all means, show up later on in the comment section when the video is posted and drop your thoughts. I'll try to respond to them, and I'm trying to get more people to come back to the comment section and take a look and respond to comments. I know Trigger Happy 262 does often. Jose and a few others, Tanzan as well. Should have